I'm John Henry, Chairman of the Committee for the Republic. We're privileged tonight to have Dr. Ron Paul, his lovely wife here many years, with us tonight to receive our Defender of Liberty Award. Ron mastered the Constitution, the birthright of birth certificate, our national birth certificate, and called the U.S. government to account for violations. Ron understood that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty and dedicated his life accordingly, even in the face of marginalization. So, Ron, I'm going to start this by giving you the award rather than wait later. I want to give it to you right now. Come on. It says, courage is the first virtue that makes all the other virtues possible. This is Aristotle said it's the enabling virtue. None of the others are possible without it. And you have loads of it. So, congrats to you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Bravo. Bravo.
I'm going to say a few words, and then Ron and I are going to have a conversation over here rather than asking to do another speech. I thought it would be more personal and informative. The United States Constitution is, as British Prime Minister Gladstone said, the greatest document ever struck off by the brain and purpose of man. American constitutional exceptionalism is congressional predominance under separation of powers. The three branches are equal, but Congress is more equal than the others. Congress is endowed with 18 enumerated powers, where the President only commands 3. No legislature in history has possessed the war power, which dwarfs all others. Every day, we tragically bear witness to the unilateral surrender of Congress of its war power, the unilateral surrender of Congress of its treaty power, the unilateral surrender of Congress of its power to investigate and oversee the executive branch, the unilateral surrender of Congress of its lawmaking power, the unilateral surrender of the power to confirm principal officers of the federal government, the unilateral surrender of the contempt power, and the unilateral surrender of the power of the purse. And I say unilateral surrender because congressional abdication is so instinctive that executive usurpation is often superfluous. Article by article, clause by clause, section by section, the Democratic and Republican parties have taken a wrecking ball to the greatest form of government the world has ever known. What is our constitutional crisis? The tyranny of the one, our imperial presidency. The crown jewel of our Constitution, separation of powers, is burned to the ground. Our two political parties endow the president with vastly more power than King George III used to tyrannize his American subjects. Since Truman took us to war in Korea, every Congress, Democratic and Republican alike, despite their oath of office, has eagerly surrendered the war power to the president. Let there be no mistake. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, international terrorism are not the greatest threat to our republic. In times of war, the law is silent. FDR threw 120,000 innocent Japanese Americans into illegal concentration camps. Since 9/11, Republican and Democratic presidents alike have engaged in industrial scale violations of our Fourth Amendment rights. Every email and telephone call of every member of Congress and the Supreme Court are intercepted by the NSA. Now, American voters, Congress, the media, and academia are dismantling the American Republic with constitutional illiteracy. Even our elite colleges and law schools are missing in action when it comes to constitutional literacy. As a graduate of Harvard College and Columbia Law School, I can testify to this firsthand, this failing. Now, my first meeting with you, Ron, was many years ago, and it was the day, I'll vividly remember, it was the day before the members were being sworn in the next day. And I'll never, to take their oath of office, and I'll never forget what you said. You remarked that your colleagues would go through the motions the next day and spend the next 2 years treating the Constitution as a scrap of paper. It made a very strong impression on me at the time. But it's only one of the many reasons we're giving Ron our Defender of Liberty Award tonight. In my opinion, James Madison is the greatest American who ever lived. In addition to being the best read founder, Madison began serving in the executive and legislative bodies at the age of 25. He witnessed firsthand politicians striking bargains to attain power, to retain power for the sake of power. Madison's genius was fashioning a constitution predicated on the crooked timber of mankind. Because men are not angels, ambition must counteract ambition to arrest the evil tendencies of all governments, to wield power, to help friends and crush adversaries. Madison's pioneering insight was that government institutions, through separation of powers, could be made to do the right things for the wrong reasons. Madison thought war was man's greatest scourge and recognized that the Republic would shipwreck without giving it power to Congress. Madison understood, as 234 years of American history collaborate, that Congress will not authorize war except in actual or perceived self-defense to aggression that has already broken the peace. Congress has no interest in gratuitous, pointless wars because its members lose rather than gain power. Congress has declared war only 5 times. In contrast, presidents have initiated hundreds of unconstitutional wars to augment executive power. Madison recognized that, so important, that truth is a process, it's not an endpoint. And process is a search for truth without ulterior motives. All knowledge is provisional, subject to change based on new facts and more deliberation. Truth requires us to live with indeterminacy. Knowing that we could be wrong prevents fanaticism. So we know that what we say here this evening will not alter the tides of history. Speaking about the Constitution to voters and public officials is, to quote a congressman, like reading Shakespeare to cows. I don't know if he wants that attribution. I forgot to ask him. But the Constitution must do what others, but the committee must do what others won't do. We hope that after the American empire collapses, like its 66% predecessors in the last 3,000 years, that what we say may contribute to a rebirth of the American Republic and a restoration of the Constitution of the United States of America. Thank you, Ron.
Very good, very nice. Very nice to see a nice, friendly crowd. That's yeah. I'm really impressed. We have 2 senators here. Can you imagine? So one I know pretty well. I remember him when he was born. And then there's another senator, you know, that comes. Let's see where. Not close enough. There you go. Mike Lee, he's still around, but Mike Lee stopped by. And also, this Thomas Massey, I've heard of him. He's famous. Well, there he is. But,
Would you be our speaker?
well, you let out the secret. That's why I'm here tonight. I'm running, I'm announcing. But keep it a secret. So I think it's great. Rand's here with his son William, and our other son, older big brother Ren is Ronnie sitting behind there, and I have yet to find out. You know, they're pretty good at telling the truth. They had instruction to always tell the truth, but I never ask them about their golf scores. So I can't get straight answers on that. So, and Ronnie's wife's here, Peggy. So let's see. I think there's somebody else. Oh, I remember. It's my wife, Carol. And I've known her for a few years, but she has to admit, and she does, that she was rather aggressive in wanting to get a date with me at the age of 16. You know? No, she's a leap year baby. And her dad had always, and she was an only child, her dad had always promised her a big birthday party when she was 16 years old. And so she had decided, I don't know how she decided this, but I think she decided about a year before that she would be asking me. But she went and maneuvered with a good friend of hers who also was dating my brother, and they worked on me, and they said, well, you got to go. I said, no, I'm not going to do all that. But finally I conceded, and she had the 16th birthday, and of course on the 29th. I said, well, I'll only have to buy presents every 4 years. Is that part of the deal? But she says, no way, you're not going to get away with that. But she's been very good at campaigning over the years, and she always said, I want to stay home and take care of the kids. Why don't you keep delivering babies and all this? So she wasn't very anxious about this political stuff. And I said, there was a time when I was challenging to go back into the Congress, and I was running against a Democrat and a Republican, and it was really pretty nasty. And back then there was a different attitude. Libertarianism wasn't even known as a word. And I happen to have a libertarian view about how stupid the drug war was. So both Republicans and Democrats each spent over $1 million, which was a lot of money back in the 1960s, 70s, and blasted me because I was for giving drugs to babies, and it was just horrible. So Carol comes, who says she doesn't know anything about politics. She says, but you know, I don't like those ads. We have to show a picture of you doing something else. So she got some pictures of the family and kids and babies and all this. So she did that, and then she said, we'll pass these out. And I thought, that's no good. So I kept arguing with her, and later on I would tell the story that she wanted to do that, and she didn't know anything about politics. So what are you doing? I said, that's the silliest idea I've ever heard of. And she said, well, I'm going to put our recipes in, from a family recipe book. And I thought, what? When are you going to say something about the Federal Reserve? No, she didn't even write it about the Federal Reserve and all that. So she did it, she passed it out, and it was a rather interesting campaign because a lot of money was spent by Republicans and Democrats. The Republicans already knew how I was going to vote, and the Democrats just didn't want to lose a seat. There was a total of 3 Republicans in the district at that time. So it was one of those things that I told people that she didn't know anything about it. But after I tell them how terrible idea I thought that was, I have to admit the truth. It was the best political piece we ever put out in 40 years. So people do want to know about the Federal Reserve. Goodness, no, I try to talk as much as I can, but they also want to know a little bit about the family, and I think that keeps us down to earth, and that's it. So she's with us, and I'm delighted that she doesn't travel a whole lot, but she flew up here on an airplane with me, and I thought that was great, and we got to see family. And I want to thank all of you for coming too, because that's really an encouragement. So I'm very pleased to see everybody. Now I guess I'm going to sit down and take the questions. We'll see see what happens. Just don't make them too hard, you know, for me.
So, Ron, you were telling me that Richard Viguerie has you in his new book. Richard Viguerie did the direct ads in your first election. I showed you the book. I gave you a copy. And so you said in the first race you were really you were all revved up about when you watched the speech on August 1971 August 15th when Nixon unilaterally, without an act of Congress, even by executive order, he just went ahead and took us off slammed the goal window abroad, and that's what really got you going, right?
That intensified what I had been thinking. It sort of confirmed what my thoughts were. And when you think back, August 15th, the speech was a remarkable historic speech because it was so outrageous. You know, he canceled the gold standard, any relationship with the dollar to gold. Of course, the American people weren't even allowed to own gold at that time. So they put on high tariffs, put on tariffs, and they, increased the spending. Everything was just really terrible. I tell you, then that caught my attention. Because there were many predictions. There were free market economists around before that, and they said this is what's going to happen. They can't maintain it because it was a joke. So this confirmed it, but it also confirmed in my mind that it was ushering in a special age that we will live through until the whole thing falls down. So 1971. And I don't think that I'm, going to be too far off on that. I don't think it's survivable. We can't survive this system. The odds of it cleaning it up, the odds of getting more Thomases and Mikes in the Congress, and Rand and others to do it, I come down very pessimistic on that. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get enough people to do this. So the dollar will have to be, revisited, and something has to be done about it. And that is something that is ongoing. But things have, this whole idea, it to me is exceptionally, a belief that isn't possible to believe, that you could print and spend money forever and fight wars forever. We know it's going to end. It's amazing it keeps going.
Right. I saw, and Rand, in your office, Tom was sporting this U.S. debt clock, and I just thought it was fabulous. I went and ordered it, and it came a couple weeks ago, and I had it charged up and ready to bring when I've got it, so Tom has lent me his. But this is have you seen this, Ron? This is says 33 trillion 653 billion 800 million and counting, and you can see it. Yeah, it's just it's.
What do you think this is? That Thomas is good.
You're pretty quick draw.
As if I'm going to forget.
Good, yeah. So what is your biggest war power story? All the years that you were in Congress.
Well, the intensive effort probably had to do with the war resolution to go into Iraq. I spent the most time and the most speeches, and of course, during that period of time, it drew together a real close friendship with Walter. And I know Walter Jones was held in high esteem.
Who is the only other member of Congress we've given the award to.
And I tried to get Walter to not punish himself so much, because he says, I voted wrong, how did you know not to vote, and all this, and he was intense on that. So, but it was during that time he changed his mind, and I said, what was it that changed your mind? He says, the fact that he woke up one day and going to, he was really neocon, and he'd go to all these briefings, and he woke up one day and he found the evidence that it wasn't true, and he lost all confidence in it. And then he was converted. But he would participate with Dennis Kucinich and I, and we tried to work with a couple other Democrats, and we daily went down trying to stop that war from coming. But it was just, you know, dreadful, and all the horrible lying going on, but no declaration of war. And yet, that had been built into my system already, because I do remember World War II, and I remember one of my school teachers going, excuse me, was redrafted for Korea and didn't come home. And then there was the Vietnam War, and I do definitely believe that the war issue helped prompt me to go into medicine, because I remember saying, well, I was ambivalent. I didn't know whether I should go into medicine or not. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to do medicine because I don't want to be drafted and sent to the infantry, and I couldn't do it. And I did get drafted. Guess what? In the October with the missiles in Cuba, even though the Cuban crisis was there, the Vietnam War was still going on too. So I had that experience, nothing other than the waste that went on. But John mentioned the fact that you know, the United Nations, you know, really helped introduce our age of what we're doing, and that was going to war, a ruthless war. You know, but my teacher died there, and when they quizzed Truman, you know, no, it's not really a war. This is a police action, you know, and he gets away with that, and all the suffering that has happened from that. But you know, the war is intensified, but it's completely different now. It's a different type of war, the military war types. But I see there's a war. We have invaders in our country. We have people coming, you know, to our land and just marching in, and there are no laws against it. But to me, you know, it just looks like a trick to get the people in. Someday they're going to wake up. How did all those people get in there and take over your country? Oh, we just opened a door and we subsidized it. And that's one thing, if anybody gets concerned about this runaway immigration, just quit subsidizing it. Quit subsidizing. No money, no balance. You don't have to be anti-immigrant. You know, we've had immigrations for all these years, but you have to quit subsidizing. You can't take money from people that are working. You can't take money away from the veterans. You can't do this and pretend that you're doing special, that you're a special person and you care about people. But if you're against this type of problem, that means you're a heathen and you don't care about people and the whole work. But that's a war, and and I think what we're seeing is a modern day Trojan horse. You know, the people coming in here, and you know, we are bankrupt. And what are we doing? You know, $100 million, $1 billion is nothing. And then this Thomas Massey comes up and he says, what are you talking about, million? You're talking about trillions of dollars. So it's amazing. But we are in a war on our borders. I think you don't subsidize it. You recognize what private property is like. And I always like to go back to how it should be in a free society, and we still have remnants of it. Your house is your castle. You should be able to stay in your house. Nobody can invade you. They can't tell you what you can say or do. They can't affect your religious beliefs or anything else in your land, which is your house. But no, they finally destroyed the principle of property and says property is collective. And therefore, they can do that, and all the modern techniques of monitoring our speech. When I left Congress last go-around, I wrote a little speech and said that the most important thing to keep, they're all important, the amendments. A lot of people like to use the Second Amendment, and I'm a strong believer, but I picked the First Amendment. I said, if we lose our right to express ourselves and come here and do this, that is big trouble, and we're at a position where they're gaining the moral high ground because they figure anything we say, we're stirring up trouble, you know, and we're causing the trouble, and that is a result of the war on education that has been instigated over many, many years, and we're seeing it now because they really are participant in the coup that has taken over. And I talk a lot about the coup, and the coup I date from the day, November 22nd, 1963. And that is when Kennedy was assassinated, then Robert Kennedy assassinated, and then Martin Luther King assassinated. So I believe our government structurally was taken, and I think you could verify that where our Department of Justice and our FBI is today.
Okay, so let's talk a little about foreign policy. So, you know, we've got this treaty, NATO treaty, and then we have three Asian treaties, one with South Korea, one with Japan, and one with Australia. What is your, do you think any of these treaties are necessary to?
I didn't hear that word. Yeah.
The treaties, the three Asian treaties and NATO.
Treaties.
Treaties, yeah, treaties, yeah.
Yes.
So would you, if you were in Congress, would you sponsor legislation to get us out of these treaties?
Yes, I'd write one-page bill and get out all of them.
Right. Good for you.
No, they're bad, and they're, you know, this whole idea. They say, well, it's the law of the land. Yeah, but they didn't say you could cancel the Second Amendment by a treaty with somebody else. I mean, that's not quite the understanding.
Right. There's so much confusion.
No. Those treaties are horrible. But there are times when people have agreements, and they might be modestly providing some benefit, and for the immediate eliminating of a treaty might make conditions worse, but I'd have to look at those individually. But the principle of treaties is very detrimental, and there's not very many that we need. Yeah.
So the Committee for the Republic worked with Walter Jones and then Tulsi Gabbard, and we had two House resolutions to make presidential wars a high crime and misdemeanor and impeachable offense. And we didn't get a lot of traction on that. Our attempt to make Congress great again has been a failure. But we ended up redoing that, and we've been talking to Tom about this. To put it more positively, as you know, the United States is in a state of neutrality. The declare a war cause means that we're in a state of neutrality, unless both houses of Congress take us out of a state of neutrality into a state of co-belligerency or belligerency.
Yeah.
And now we're certainly as of this Hamas attack, we've now become a co-belligerent in Israel without a declaration of both houses. We're that in Ukraine for sure. We're a co-belligerent there, and also in Yemen, and I guess you know, the list can go on if we have time. But so, would you support making breaking the state of neutrality unilaterally by the president? Would you put a punishment on that the Constitution provides in the impeachment power?
I think the definition would have to be clarified, because state of neutrality, you know, I'm a non-interventionist. I don't want to do it. Libertarians even join in some of the rhetoric about what we don't want to do with you, libertarian conservatives, is to have isolationism. And one thing that I think partially so that I've gotten people to think away from defending isolationism, that you know, don't do anything. I'm not an isolationist. Matter of fact, I think a libertarian society is very, very integrated, because you can trade, you can travel, and you can express yourself and do all these things. And I think that is the way. But you say, well, how are some of these things done? And I say, well, how are things done on a personal level, on a religious level, an economic level? Aren't the both sides supposed to be, you know, agreeing to it? Voluntarism. Why can't that be international? So, all right, let's say somebody here might want to go, fight fight the Ukrainians, or join with another group, or somebody wants to go with Palestine. I would have no prohibitions about that. I would think that if you want to go take your money and take your body and join what you want. I would not prohibit you from doing that. I might advise you about it, but for them to vote and do this, and even with fancy words of neutrality and stuff, that's an introduction. Another thing that I think is a dangerous introduction is the gigantic use of sanctions. You know, that's just evidence of a dictatorship. You know, and that's why we have enemies, and why we're going to have a lot more enemies is because of sanctions. But I think sanctions are an act of war. Can you imagine what we would do if we had, what if China became powerful enough to put sanctions on us? We wouldn't be very happy about that. So sanctions lead to a lot of trouble, and especially if sanctions advance to the next point of blockades and keeping people from getting in and out of the country. Those are acts of war, as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing, though, why sanctions are dangerous, it really has neutralized some of our relationships with the left, because the left would you know, work with us, like Dennis and others. They'll work together and be anti-war, but some of them say, well, we have to still punish them. You know, we have to do something. so they say, we'll put on sanctions. And then when we put on sanctions and freeze their assets, and then somebody tries to clean up the act and give them back the assets that we stole, then they're bailing them out or giving them money, and you're giving away taxpayers' money. But no, it doesn't work. They shouldn't have sanctions, and they shouldn't you know, have any prohibition against a willingness to go. I would want to care about if there was a legal war, like there was a declaration, which, you know,
Right.
under those conditions, you might want to do something.
Right. Well, we could have legislation defining co-belligerency, spell it out.
Yeah, that's good.
That would. So what about a piece of legislation that would require Congress for any troops to be abroad? No troops go abroad. You know, when the Ukraine thing happened, I forgot how many thousand, it was 20,000. Biden just sends troops abroad. What about having all the troops here unless there's a statute by Congress?
Oh, I think that's where they belong. Maybe our borders would be safer. No, I don't.
Okay.
No, we weren't meant to. I remember George Bush running for his first campaign, that he had a statement that was really pretty neat. He said, we're not the policemen of the world, you know, and all this stuff. No, we shouldn't be doing that. Besides, that's the motivation is to make us safe. Governments never have made us safe. Just all this, you know,
Right.
security now. Oh, we're going to make you safe. You know, all these things on privacy. It started with the Bank Secrecy Act to protect our privacy, and it meant that the government would know everything about your finances. And then they came along and they say, well, the government should never have anything to know about your medical records. So they passed the Medical Secrecy Act, and everything goes to the governments right now. So and I told my staff this all the time, your job is not going to be too difficult. Sometimes you won't have to go past reading the title. when the title says something good, just assume it's the opposite of what they want to do. And we might not have to worry about that, but it is a shame. So no, they shouldn't. We shouldn't have to have troops all around the world. Now, Jefferson did send troops, you know, to the Mediterranean.
He had statutes for each of the Barbary Pirates.
And I got, first time I read that, I said, I don't know whether that's a good idea. But he did it the way he thought it should be done.
Right.
He didn't do it on his own.
Right.
It wasn't executive orders. And, you know.
Yeah, I think he had 11, didn't he? 11 statutes in the Barbary Pirates.
And he had to have those passed before he would go in,
Yeah.
because it could potentially be very dangerous. So no, the troops don't need to be around. But what we're facing now today is the shrewdness of turning around and making us look like, you know, if you're against open borders, then you're immoral because you don't care about people.
Right.
So if that happens, they want to turn it around and make you look like a bad person if you don't go along with it.
So Tom, we had this, what they call it, a continuing resolution, the debt ceiling, right? And the $1.5 trillion dollar, we spend annually on the American empire was exempted from the debt ceiling, from the CR, right? Yeah. So that's magic, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't lay awake at night about the longevity of the empire.
Right.
We're not going to vote it out of office,
No.
but it's going to self-destruct. And I think we are seeing the
Yeah.
cracks already, you know. And I see cracks coming with the American people. I'm always looking for them, but it's hard to find all the time. But, I saw the consequence so often of lockdown. People, I just loved it when the parents went to the PTA and had a little battle with them, and the motivation was defending their kids. And a lot of times they get rid of the school boards and everything else, but there's a limit. And the economic problems, and we have a long way to go to hit the limit. But the conclusion, the limits can be, overwhelming. The bigger and the longer the bubble lasts, the bigger the crash is. And one thing that I don't want to get off for foreign policy, I know, but when I was doing the presidential debates, they said, well, this week we're going to talk economic policy, and next week we're going to talk about foreign policy. And I argued with them, you can't separate the two. You're fighting a war. Well, how are you going to pay for it? And is it a civil liberty issue? Of course it is. That's the time of war. That's when we lose our liberties. But there's this whole thing that we have to watch out and calm them down, because I think the cracks are there. And if you call up next year and say, Ron, you made it okay, why don't you just stop by? But you're not allowed. You're not allowed to have this meeting. This is subversive. And, it's happening. And every time, once in a while, you hear about it in the churches, too. The Hithen church and penalty and this mixture of social media and government, and the mixture of corporations in government. This is a serious problem, and that's a war against liberty. So if you don't want to just talk about the shooting, because our government now has figured it out. No body bags, we can do what we want. We can steal from the people, they won't care. We'll just print the money, and if they come up short because of the inflation, we'll just give them more money, So that's what they do, and they just put up with it. But it's going to be, it will end, and I think the signs are there. I'm always looking. That's why I came here tonight, to get a boost.
Good. That's
Get a
good.
boost.
That's why we had you here, to get the boost. Yeah.
But
Yogi Berra said, anything that can't go on forever will end.
Yes. So, Daniel and I have a little debate going on our program. Some days he's pretty pessimistic, but some days he's optimistic, and I'm a little pessimistic. But I'm basically, when I look at a big picture by individuals, when I think of, even when I was in Congress, I can't think of, I think it must be worse now. But when I was there, I found out that you could stick to your guns, vote the way you do, don't pretend you're going to be the speaker. Maybe it'll come yet, but not yet. You could just keep, talking there. But I think most people I've run into, whether they're the neighbors, the people I went to church with, people I went to school with, I mean, there were always nasty people, but most people are pretty nice. But then I say, am I deceiving myself? There's a lot of bad people out there too, and that's our job of a worldwide history, is sorting out the bad from the good.
So, Ron, we got this big fight. Are they going to have a vote tonight, Tom, on the speakership?
Yeah, I have to leave in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and so when I got out of college, the only job I wanted was to work for Senator Fulbright, because he'd had the hearings against the Vietnam War. And but at that time, I wasn't focused on. I couldn't have told you who the Speaker of the House was. It wasn't that important. All the power was at the committee level and in the membership. It was not the power. So when Gingrich came in, as I understand it, he consolidated and brought all this power up, and then Pelosi did it on steroids. And so is the problem, you think, now the speakership, the real problem is that there's just too much power and it's a winner-take-all kind of thing. Any faction gets all that power. What's your
I think
view?
the issue is less important to that because we haven't had a speaker for a few weeks and nothing has happened. They closed down, they closed down the government. Nobody knows it's closed down. That's the whole thing. It will stop operating. The Constitution has stopped because where do we get our central bank? Oh, somebody came up with a good idea. The bankers needed more protection, So it's on and on, but it's all going to end. But our job is, what you participate in is, well, if you guys don't want your troops around the world, what are you going to do to solve the problems in the Middle East? That we want to know what your suggestions are. We should have suggestions. It's easy. I can list all the things that I'm opposed to, but how do you solve these problems in a voluntary manner? And I think there's only about 3 rules you have to have. Don't lie, cheat, or steal. If you can't do it, why would we ever let our government do it to us constantly? We need to get the government to stop all that lying, cheating, and stealing.
Well, good. So, Tom, you've got to go, and do you want to ask Ron a question?
Can I nominate you for speaker tonight?
Yeah, have you ever been laughed at?
Every day.
No.
Ron will be a self-liquidating.
I would like to see it for 2 minutes that they honestly thought that might happen. Hysteria would break out like you've never seen it. And I would... give
a few heart attacks.
If I couldn't promote any bill to the floor that didn't fit yours and my qualifications, is if I don't have the authority coming from the Constitution, I'm not going to vote for it. So if you did that, oh, is that what he's all about? No, it's not going to happen that way. The changes have to start from the bottom. Unfortunately, somebody who understood that better than anybody else is George Soros. He started from the bottom and he controlled the educational system. Now they control. And why is it some of these people who are supposed to be business people and all are going along with this stuff, And but he knew to get the people in office was at the very local level.
Well, listen, before I go, I want to thank you and Carol for giving us RAND, but more importantly, for giving us a set of principles that we can operate under here. And you said you came here for a boost. I'm going to tell you, I got a big boost tonight, and I am inspired to vote no on all this crap when the House opens back up. Thank you.
So one of the things that our focus has been on the Constitution and how our foreign policy operates outside the Constitution, but we're also very focused on the Federal Reserve. In other words, our system's working. The 2 parties compete on the immigration issue. They compete on health care. They compete on environment, so forth. But when it comes to the money and the violence, the big banks and the biggest empire in history, it's the tree falls in the wood. There's no one there to hear it. So did it make a sound? And so we go where the silence is loudest, right? And so it's just not talked about. And so we're very focused on, do you think if Nixon hadn't cut the gold window, would we still, would we be financing this $1.5 trillion on top of everything else every year with the military spending, and fully loaded? Do you think that the reserve currency and the fiat currency are key to enabling that, so that we don't see the cracks that you're looking for? We'd see those cracks a lot faster if we had to pay it with taxes, right?
See, I think going back to ownership of gold and all has helped a lot of Americans, start preparing. But I think the place where it really might happen is in China, because they're opening up their rules and laws and encouraging everybody to buy gold coins and all. That doesn't mean they're going to be on the gold standard soon. But the more people who are protected, the smaller the number that know about it, the easier it will be to push us around. Now, in 1933, when Roosevelt took over, they understood where the power was and what had to be done and what they had to do to the monetary system. The first thing they had to do was eliminate gold, and that's when they called in the gold. And but re-legalizing gold, I think, is a good step, but it's a long way to go. It's this appetite for depending on government. They trust government to work, but they've been bombarded with this all their lives, all through school. When I first heard some of the propaganda, the environmental propaganda, going into the first and second grades, I mean, that's where the action really is, and that's why everybody has people would ask me, especially in the college crowds, young people would come up and they say, "I think you've convinced me." So they say, "What should I do? What should I do?" And I would probably be in a cynical mood, and I say, "Do whatever you want." and there's things that you can do. This organization is here because somebody thought it would be a good idea, and I never had an idea at one time. You know what? Someday I'm going to go to Congress and da da da. And somebody said, "How did you ever stand it up there with those people?" And it was a simple answer for me. I said, it never bothered me. I says I was just realistic, and I knew what would happen. I didn't expect it to happen, so my expectations were low. But in my deeper thoughts, I was trying to at least convince myself that I was thinking about the things that I don't even have to tell you, because that is changing people's mind to respecting and doing whatever they can to promote the cause of liberty. And that worked into my religious beliefs, my economic beliefs, and political beliefs, and all comes together. It's the absence of violence. That's the biggest thing in the world that we have to do. And that's why I love the book, The Law. Bastiat's Law. And I remember Leonard Reed, first time I met Leonard Reed was a favorite of mine, that he gave me a book, The Law, and that is really great because it's so basic principle, Right. And I think that there's more of that going on. I give it a lot of credit. Any organization like this, or especially I tried to help the Mises Institute for a long time, because there you can get literature, and the Fee Foundation was like that too. You could get anything you want, and it's education that is it. And the politics is important because that's a reflection of the education, but I don't think if you change the board of directors of Harvard University, it's going to solve much of a problem very fast. Right. You might want to do those things, but to get the attention of where the problems are. But you have to be realistic, but you have to come from a source of fundamental beliefs and understanding what liberty is all about and why personal liberty is collectivism. That was a word I don't like. Collectivism for passing out the stuff, and then now we use it for collective guilt. Oh yeah, we'll do this. Somebody about 1,000 years ago did this. We gotta, punish everybody for this. So it's collectivism and not thinking in terms of individuals. That's what I think is so important.
So let's pursue the Bob. You're our Federal Reserve expert. Do you want to start? And then we've got a question back there.
We're going to move a little, I guess, to the monetary side. Although I completely agree with you on the War Powers Act, and your award is well deserved. But as you said, the monetary side is kind of connected to that. And I wrote a book, the series of books that sold about 1 million copies that was very much talking about the debt issue you're worried about. And I think all of my readers would ask this question is, why hasn't something kind of gone wrong earlier? In fact, people will often say, well, gee, Bob, you know, yeah, you're right. We had $3 trillion in debt and now we got 30 trillion. Well, you know, we're still doing fine. So, and it's one of the biggest issues I've run into. So I just wrote another book kind of on my thoughts of where it's going to end, fake money, real danger. But my readers and I would ask you, what's going to cause it and why can't it go on forever? We know it can't, but what's going on? Also, one other thing, did you actually deliver 4,000 babies? Because I remember I grew up in Houston. I remember
You know, the one way you could answer that question is, oh, you don't think too much has happened yet. Would you care to take a drive with me? We'll go to San Francisco and LA and Chicago. And one thing I've been thinking a lot about Chicago, and I mentioned in my report yesterday. Anybody here remember 1968 in Chicago? Yeah, people got fed up. And it wasn't the politicians in Washington, the people got fed up. Too much killing and all, and and it was a division in the Democratic Party, and the streets rioted. And believe me, Nixon won that wholeheartedly, and then in '72, only McGovern won. So people finally got tired of all this. So I think that people will get tired of it, and I think the evidence. You know, this idea going back and forth from, can you be a little bit optimistic or do you have to be totally negative? Because there are some terrible things going on, and but I always want to turn around and say, you know, when Daniel and I would do the program, we'd come up with an incident. One thing people responded to was the outrage that we found that the people expressed, whether they were Republicans or Democrats, is if somebody passed a law, and I think somebody in San Francisco did that on occasion, and then didn't obey that law, they abused it, they didn't follow the law, and that infuriates people. So that is what we have to concentrate on, is showing how they don't. How about the people who would most likely want to take your gun? They're protected by guns. They run the guns. You know, I'm really much in favor of regulating guns. I'd take the guns away from all bureaucrats that work for Washington. They don't need it.
So, Ron, we have another Federal Reserve question back here.
Hi, Augustus Alzona. As we move on to phase 2 of the Ron Paul revolution, the real revolution coming up here, revolutionaries in here, insurgents, insurrectionists, whatever they want to call us. But anyway, I worked at the Federal Reserve from 1980 to 1985. Yeah, they were actually in the process of erasing me. I went down there to find out about my retirement benefits, but that's a long story. After I got, my question is this, I first heard about you and became a devotee also of Milton Friedman when I was working at the Fed, when it was all Keynesian, and this was under the chairmanship of Chairman Paul Volcker, and I'm sure you know all about that. Okay, my basic question is this, having just been in this area since 1955 and seen things which have gone on, in terms of you know, the gold standard and all that, and you know, all acquainted with that, and et cetera. Now, with this thing moving towards Bitcoin, BitCurrency, as you know, the Federal Reserve, the federal government is going towards having some sort of cryptocurrency, BitCurrency, and then of course there's cryptocurrency throughout the world. What would you advise those of us, patriots, America first, whatever you want to call us, whatever label they want to put on us, to do in terms of protecting, especially those of us in the middle class or working class here in America? What should we do in terms of protecting ourselves and our family as we move forward?
So you're talking about the the Federal Reserve digital Federal Reserve digital currency government.
Yeah, but you started off spending most of your question talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
Cryptocurrency, what can we do just normal?
Well, in a free society, a free market, you can use whatever you want, you know, and if you favor the cryptocurrencies, I've never seen one, so I have trouble getting too excited. So no, but and I go to a lot of conferences where they're supercharged on Bitcoin and cryptos, and I'm sort of neutral on investment. I don't tell people, don't ever do that, don't ever do that, because I know in 6 months now, it might go from 68,000 down to 28,000. You can't ever tell. So no, I think it should be legal, except for one thing: no fraud. If you commit fraud and there's been charges of fraud, they say, oh, that's why we need to be approved by SEC. No, that doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean SEC's in trying to prevent crime. It's supposed to be there if somebody has committed a crime to deal with it. But no, it's people should be allowed to do it. I think history is on the side of using precious metals and things that are real. And I like Mises's argument about where money comes from. It comes from the marketplace. And individuals have to do it. Even in a time of a crisis, a war, people use some substance that's available, but it's still a substance that was recognizable, and they could at least pass it around as temporary money. And so anything can be used. And Hayek made the suggestion to use a basket of currencies. And I said, well, if you don't commit fraud, that's okay. But I can't see how a basket of, not currency, a basket of commodities that he would say. But that, once again, if you had 10 commodities, how are you going to, if people want to reimburse, if you want to turn in your paper, like in the old days, if you had a gold certificate and you were going to say, hey, maybe they printed too much paper. Up until very recently, when I was early in my practice, you could do that with silver. Silver stayed usable for a long time, but silver, I remember, I think it was $1.29. Once it was over $1.29, it was worthwhile melting. So, and that was sort of my deciding in 1971. So I became a silver buff, and it's just one of the things you can do because you can identify it, and it's been known. And matter of fact, I think silver has been used, but both of them have been used for a long, long time. But silver has been used a lot, and there'd be room for both. It's for that matter, silver, as long as you don't have bimetallism like we had, it didn't work very well.
We've got a lady, here's Warren Coates on our board. Warren?
Our problem is much more fiscal than it is monetary. And that's really where the attention needs to go, to cut back on government spending, and whatever it is we think the government should be spending to pay for it with taxes and stuff, or as far too much debt. On the monetary side, this is my expertise, I would like to make two, or well, maybe three comments. One, crypto kind of turns the people's mind in a funny direction. Virtually, let's say 90% of the money supply and payments in the United States are all digital, have been for some time. How many people actually take cash and go pay? You pay with your credit card, you transfer over the internet. So that's crypto, but it's the crypto anchored in the US dollar, et cetera. So don't get confused by digital money. Digital is just a better technology for making a payment. The real issue is what anchors the value of that money. I helped establish, as an employee of the International Monetary Fund, 2 currency boards, Bosnia and Bulgaria. Okay, well, okay, I'll try and be brief. A currency board is a system that I think you would like and do like very much, in which the money supply is determined by the public. The way the gold standard worked when the rules were abided by. That is, the unit of money was anchored to something real, and people could buy or sell it, redeem it, issue more. That's how a currency board works. It's market determined. However much people want, they can have, but it's all fixed to a hard anchor of value. That's how the gold standard worked. And in the case of Bosnia and Bulgaria, they're both fixed to the euro. But so our real problem is fiscal, and I think we need to attack the fiscal problem.
Did you hear that? Tom?
Can you give me the gist of that?
Yeah, he's saying our biggest problem is fiscal, and the monetary follows that.
Yeah, yeah, that it's a fiscal problem and not a monetary policy. I don't think you can separate the two. But if you have a fake system and you're not limited in the printing of money like now, there's no limits on spending. But if you have a government like ours, even when we pretended we had a gold standard, but you could also put people to sleep and say, well, we're going to spend as much money. We'll always have an emergency for war and whatnot. If you do that and get careless, it's not going to work. It ends. and one thing a lot of people forget, they think that the monetary supply is very, very important, but also the psychology of the system, of the trust in the money. If we're at war, and the United States has been blessed with great wealth, and we got away with maneuvering ourselves into having the reserve currency of the world, and that has really worked well, and we have become so prosperous that everybody went to sleep. Well, what was happening in the meantime? We were giving up our republic, and things have gotten worse. And they say, well, now we're going to make it redeemable. You're not going to make the Federal Reserve note redeemable in gold. That's not going to happen. What will make it high enough? Let's see. What would you tempt me with on when would I turn in my gold? Let's see. If they offered me, well, it's $2,000 right now. Do you think a gold bug? People who understood this issue. What if they said we're going to convert all Federal Reserve notes at $4,000 an ounce? Well, somebody might do it on the short run, and make a deal. But no, it's not going to. If they told me they were going to double the supply, you double the amount of money you get for your gold, it wouldn't work because how many times when gold was $20 on. What's the multiple of 20 into 2,000? 100-fold? I mean, how many doubled? And people say, well, you don't think that gold is going to double in price again? Sure, it's going to, but don't ask me when.
Right.
maybe,
Well, Ron,
maybe when there's a war started that we don't like.
I promised you that we would stop now. So I appreciate you coming all the way from Texas and made a big effort to do that, and we're very, as Tom said, you gave us all a boost tonight.
Well, thank you very much. It's been